Mr. Knight. I know Mr. Knight well.
Hey, Ken, thank you for being on.
There, let me get, aha, there we go.
There we go. Well, Catherine, it is 5:30 and we have quorum and Marcos is coming, so it's your move.
Is Spencer not with us today?
No. Oh yeah, I just told Jay. Catherine's our chair today. No Spencer.
Awesome.
Is anyone left in the waiting room, or am I good to go?
Yeah, no one's left.
Okay, cool. So hello everyone, Spencer couldn't make it today, so I will be chairing today's meeting. And we will begin with calling this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. I would like to announce that this meeting is being recorded, and we'll go to roll call.
Director Brent is absent. Director Flaherty.
Here.
Here. Director Bertrand. Director Aguilar.
Here.
Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Geis is absent. Director Deschler.
Here.
And that's everybody, right? Did I call everybody? Yeah.
And then we'd like to move on to the land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Enescoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. We'll move on to public comment. I believe, Jonathan, you have something to read aloud.
Yes, I know Director Bertrand's just getting back in. Okay, there we go. Yes, we have one public comment from the public that was emailed in. It's general public comment, not related to the item, but I'll read it. It's from Mr. Peter Neuschel. So it goes, today's Nexus describes a party committee headed by Ethan Bertrand. Meanwhile, student groups are unilaterally organizing to address the failings of UCSB, the CSD, and Santa Barbara County with regard toward partying in IV during the pandemic. UCSB's response received an F. UCSB Party and G4T are evidence of your district's failure to serve the community during the ongoing pandemic. Your constituents are going it alone. We already pay for an Isla Vista Parks and Recreation District, recreation emphasized. Movies in the park, concerts, and parties are their department, not the CSD's. You are supposed to be dealing with parking in Isla Vista. Places for people to park if they attend an event, places to park so that you don't have to walk a mile to get home, a parking permit program so that IV meager supply serves residents, your constituents. If the IV master plan is too hard to understand, try entering keyword parking. You fund the police to ensure the safety and security of nightlife, not create it. One example is the safety and security of the Deltopia party that is not happening this year. Have your overpriced lawyer from Riverside explain your powers. Stay out of IVRPD's sandbox. 2,000 of your constituents signed a petition demanding action in response to the pandemic, and you have a street tree planting grant as the sole agenda item. If you want to be on the party committee, join IVRPD, start serving your constituents.
Thank you for that. And then I don't believe there are any other public comments. And then, yeah, just a reminder, we cannot take any action on anything that is not agendized. But I believe that's all because I think it's just us right now. But so we'll move on to discussion and action items. We have 3.1, letter of support, tree planting community resilience grant. The board will consider authorizing staff to submit a letter of support for a tree planting community resilience grant.
Great, thank you. So just to give context to the board, I know I might have given you a little bit of an email heads up, but we got this request to send in a letter of support for this grant from Mr. Ken Knight, who's here on our call, and who'll present in a bit on this idea. But yeah, he reached out to us last week, I think maybe the day after our board meeting. So we couldn't get on the last agenda, but it's, Spencer and I met with him to hear out what they're working on. And it's I'll let him go into it, but it's a grant to do tree planting in Isla Vista between June and December of 2021. And they're asking us for a letter of support. And there are different ways for us to potentially support the effort, either through our Ivy Beautiful program or other ideas that the board might have. And that's one of our questions today is like, how would we like to be involved, or what else would we like to contribute to this effort? But I want to turn it over to Ken now to present, and I'm also going to share my screen so that there's a description of the grant being shown while he's talking. So I'm going to do that and turn it over to Ken to share more about this grant. And thank you for reaching out, Ken, to us. I'm glad we were able to connect in time to be able to consider this. So I want to turn it over to you.
Okay. First, a little bit about me. I know some of you from other lives that I've led here. Right now, I'm a consulting arborist. I've been a consulting arborist for about the last 20 years. And I'm also head of an organization called Your Children's Trees, which is a nonprofit organization. And we also have a similar organization at UC Santa Barbara called Your Children's Trees at UCSB, which is the student-led branch of Your Children's Trees. And we're interested in tree planting, tree care. We run our own nursery, and we've been involved in the area and at local schools since 2014. I have also been involved in other community organizations before that, but this organization's been around for the last 6 years. And we're part of a statewide organization of nonprofit groups called California Relief, and a national association of nonprofit organizations. And this national organization is the Alliance for Community Trees, which is affiliated with the Arbor Day Foundation. The Arbor Day Foundation looks for resources from national sponsors to help local organizations do their work. And about 2 weeks ago, I was notified that this community resilience grant was available and was due by March 5th. And so there's a lot, not much in the way of turnaround time to prepare for that. But I'm fairly good at writing grants. And I looked at all the criteria that we needed in order to qualify for this grant. And by the way, what you're looking at right now is the draft of the online grant application. And unfortunately, it truncates the responses. So I have a separate explanation there in terms of the supporting information. That might be more helpful, Jonathan, to show that.
Yeah, I'll pull that up. Thank you, Ken. I didn't realize it had been cut off.
Yeah, I didn't realize too until I started looking at, oh, no, it's not there. So anyway, this national sponsor is Bank of America. And Bank of America wants to give out grants, $50,000 grants to communities that meet their criteria. And number one criteria is you got to have a Bank of America in your community. And there's one obviously right next door to the community services district there. And it's got to be a low income community. And in looking at the census data, the census tracts for the area just to the west of Ocean Road, all the way over to Camino del Sur, is considered low income. Now, obviously, there's lots of students there, and the amount of income of those students isn't that high. But this is kind of, we meet the criteria for having a low income area. And what is very interesting about this particular grant is that there are very few restrictions on it. And what the grant would allow us to do is to plant trees in private areas. Now, most grants have a requirement that you plant in public areas, and we can do that. We can work with the Isla Vista Park and Recreation District, Recreation and Park District, to plant trees in park areas. But this grant gives us the opportunity to work with private property owners to plant trees in private areas. Now, there's a heck of a lot more space available for planting trees in private areas than there are in public areas, particularly in residential areas of Isla Vista. There's very little room on the streets when there is some available area. Most of that parkway areas have been confined to the Embarcadero Loop. And so this would allow us to work with private property owners to plant trees in private areas. And because of the nature of this, we could handle it in a couple of different ways. One way is to simply have a distribution program for trees, where we gave out trees as part of a tree education program. Well, I've been involved in planting trees in this area for at least the last 20 years. And I know what works and what doesn't work. And I've tried planting trees in Isla Vista. And generally, it hasn't worked out too well because of primarily follow-up. Follow-up is the biggest thing we've had the problem with, is that because of the high turnover in the population, there's very few places where we can plant a tree and expect somebody to take care of it. We now have an organization in the way of Your Children's Trees that could help in the planting of these trees and in the follow-up care. The planting of trees in Isla Vista is it's difficult. I planted probably over 5,000 trees in the South Coast area, and it's hard work. The ground is hard. It has to be prepared in a certain way. You don't just dig a hole and shove the tree in. There's lots of things that you have to take care of, and there's lots of follow-up. So that's essentially what this grant hopefully would allow us to do, is to buy the trees, to provide for interns that can help in the planting and follow-up care of the trees. And hopefully we could have residents of the community be employed as either, won't call them interns, let's call them trainees, that can work with members of the community. And hopefully they'll be members of the community that we could have some funding for to give them a little part-time employment. The way in which we would operate the program is Your Children's Trees would be the fiscal agent. That is, the money would be received by Your Children's Trees, a formal nonprofit, and we would be responsible for dispensing all of the funding. We're not asking the Isla Vista Community Services District for any funds. We are really trying to provide additional funds for a program that, should we get this grant, that would be a benefit to the community. And that is essentially the basics of it. Why don't I stop at this point and try to take questions about it.
So we'll go to members of the board first for discussion, and then to members of the public. I saw a hand from Director Freeman.
Yes, so thank you. I am very excited by this. Back when we were working on coming up with what was needed in Isla Vista and what would be of interest for having local government, one of the things that was on my short list involved trees. And trees are something that many people in the community take very seriously. It's something that over the years, as you've indicated in some of your documentation, many trees in the area have been removed through the course of new development, whether it be from the county putting in sidewalks or even the university building out new things, such as like when they did Ivy Theater, they took out a big tree. One of the first actually items that was in Seek Like Fix many years before we ended up getting involved in it was an item from Britta Gustafson, who does the Isla Vista Local Wiki, about trying to get UCSB to put back a tree that had been removed. Now, the complexity, as has been mentioned, is that whenever the county goes around taking out trees, they just go to the Parks District and figure out, okay, well, we've got a bunch of trees we need to put back in, and the trees are slowly getting concentrated into the parks. And I love the fact that our parks get a bunch of trees, but the fact that then when you walk down the street, we don't have any trees is just so sad. And we often get complaints from, I mean, there's the guy who runs the bike shop that I've forgotten both his name and the name of the bike shop on the corner of Pardal and Embarcadero del Mar. Virtually every time I would see him, he would ask me, what's going on with the trees? Are we going to get more trees? And so this item coming before us and this grant that you want to apply for, I am very excited about this, and I am very happy to have us support your grant. I do have 1.5 questions. The half question is I get the impression, I think this solves that problem, that since you're the fiscal agent and you're the person doing everything, and we're merely providing a letter of support, that any of the restrictions that we might have in place on us wouldn't apply to this, which is great, because my understanding of talking to the county with trying to get, well, if you're going to take trees out when you put in that sidewalk, can we put a tree in next door? Can we put a tree in nearby? Is that this increases the property value of the place where you end up putting the tree, and that this ends up being a weirdly lopsided benefit from the public towards specific homeowners. And so it would always end up getting dragged into complications of, well, maybe if we didn't actually do any of the planting, maybe if we simply provided trees on a first come, first served basis, if there was an open process for the whole thing. But having you run it seems to solve all those problems. And so I'm very happy that you step forward in order to do this grant and to ask us for this letter of support. I guess I have a question. Do we actually, you mentioned that we have a Bank of America next to the IVCSD. We did back, an ATM, that's efficient. Okay, all right. Because we did have a Bank of America near the IVCSD, and then it was burned down, not once, twice.
We're not going there.
All right. Yeah, so I'm very excited to throw my support behind your grant application. So thank you.
Thank you. I see Director Dashwood raise their hand.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, Ken. Nice to see you.
How you doing, Kristen? Good to see you.
Yeah.
We can go back always.
Yes, we do. So I just had a couple questions. I wanted to ask, so the focus of this will be on planting trees in private areas, working with private property owners. Is that where all the trees will go, or will there be opportunity? Okay, no, there'll be opportunity to put them in some public right away.
Right. We, because of the short notice on this particular grant, well, we would have liked to have an opportunity to have the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District sign on to have the County of Santa Barbara sign on. Just didn't have time to do that. So it doesn't exclude any of the agencies that exist in Isla Vista. It's just, this grant is so unique in the sense that it provides that opportunity. We could give perhaps other grants to plant in public areas, not going to get grants to plant in private areas. So that would be the focus. But sure, if we got spots that we can put a tree in, yeah, we'd love to do it. Now, of course, we have to go through the same process that anybody would have to go to. Any property owner, you have to get their authorization to proceed. And of course, if it's with the county, then you have to get a permit to plant a tree, and they have various restrictions, which they have. And most of the restrictions in the county have to do with the fact that there's simply not enough right of way to plant in most of the streets. And then, of course, with the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District, they'll have their master plans as to how they want the parks to look, and we would have to work within that context. And we have that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask, so this grant would be only in Isla Vista community?
This grant would be only in the area that is considered the low income area. And that is between El Colegio to the north and Pacific Ocean to the south, and just past Ocean Road to the west. And to the east, it would stop at Camino del Sur, which means there's a large portion of Isla Vista that still wouldn't be eligible. Although we just did get a grant from California Relief to do some plantings at Isla Vista School, but that's a separate grant. But because of the nature of this grant, they want to see plantings done in a low income area. So we give them a low income area.
Okay, I have two more questions. I wanted to ask, in terms of financially how this organization is set up, if you could just explain the YCT program and then your relationship to it. And then also, for my interest, I'd like to know the relationship to UCSB, because I need to know if there's any problem with me in that, voting on that.
Okay. In terms of Your Children's Trees, I am the president of Your Children's Trees, the nonprofit. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. I am a 100% volunteer. I do not get paid for any of my work with this or my work as a technical advisor to the campus organization, Your Children's Trees at UCSB. All monies come pretty much from grants and donations, but pretty much from grants. A lot of the grants are coming from, in terms of Your Children's Trees at UCSB, would be for grants coming primarily from university organizations such as Coastal Fund, AS Finance and Business Committee, and the Community Volunteer Foundation. Coming from the nonprofit side, most of our funding has come from grants from California Relief. And then I also make a sizable contribution as well.
Okay, so I guess I just don't understand the relationship between Your Children's Trees and UCSB. Is it that UCSB is an affiliate, or AS has a program that's affiliated with this program? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Your Children's Trees at Your Children's Trees, the nonprofit, is a separate organization with a limited board of directors. But the board of directors, I'm the president, The treasurer is Tammy Mason, who's over at the Mechanics Bank. We have a very small board of directors. We also include all of the officers on Your Children's Trees at UCSB as part of the board of directors of the nonprofit. The Your Children's Trees board is a part of a campus recognized club. So that is run by students. It is a student-led organization. They have their own board of directors. I am the technical advisor to Your Children's Trees at UCSB. So there is some overlap there. And if you're not comfortable with that, then I guess it might be appropriate for you, if you feel that that's a conflict of interest, just to say, abstain from voting on this.
Okay, thank you. And then thanks, Ken. I'm going to ask Ethan. Ethan is the expert on conflict stuff. But so Ken, did I hear you correctly that you don't take any salary for the work that you do?
No, I am a consulting arborist. That's my professional work. And I derive a great deal of satisfaction out of working with the students. We have about 15 students. Well, first of all, there's an 8-member board of directors. And then we have, this term, we have about 10 in-person interns. And then we have about another 7 or 8 virtual interns that work with us. And I'm a volunteer for that. So I have to go out and work in order to pay for my fun stuff that I do here.
Thank you, Ken.
Director Aguilar.
Thank you. Ken, thank you for presenting today. This is a really cool idea. I have a few questions. So this group, Your Children's Trees, it seems like the children that we're referring to are UCSB students, or are we referring to like more of the youth who like grow up here in Isla Vista or possibly in Santa Barbara? Could you just, that's my first quick question.
Well, Your Children's Trees is really oriented to the fact that we're planting trees for the next generation of people. And so we don't plant just the trees aren't just for your children's trees, they're for your children's trees, which is what we like to emphasize. The people that are involved in the organization are primarily UCSB students. The people that we focus on are not only, well, during normal times, non-COVID times, I should say, we have probably several thousand volunteers that work with us over a period of a year. But we also deal with a lot with local elementary school. So we have an outreach program where we conduct science and math activities as part of science nights at local elementary schools. And that's a lot of fun. And the UCSB interns participate in those activities in dealing with the other children. So I guess the answer to your question is, yeah, we deal with all kinds of kids.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I had some fortunate experience growing up in Fresno, working on an orchard, planting trees, taking care of trees, and seeing how fruit trees can, become an income of a small sort for a boy, but also all the work that goes into year round and taking care of the tree. And it's an important life lesson. And I'm wondering if there is opportunities for, the youngest generation, the elementary school kids, if there is opportunities for them to literally get their hands dirty, to press the tree into the ground, to see all the different work that goes into sustaining the life. Are those opportunities present?
On this program, not as much. We have a separate program, like I said, to work with Isla Vista schools separately as part of a tree planting and tree care program at Isla Vista School. This program is intended really to have property owners involved and to make sure not only that they want the tree and that they'll be willing to take care of it. One thing I would like to emphasize is just about everybody wants a fruit tree. Unfortunately, fruit trees require constant irrigation and constant fertilization. And if you don't do that, they die. And so we don't emphasize fruit trees, even though we like it. And on private property, it'd be a great idea. It's just, it's not conducive to having people do that unless they're really committed, unless they show they can really care. So it's a tough call, but most of our trees probably will end up being shade trees.
I totally agree with you there. That was going to be my next direction of questioning, is what types of trees are you thinking of? And I was hoping that they wouldn't be fruit trees for exactly that same reason you're describing, because it does take seasonal care. Each season has a different mood that you need to be preparing for your tree, no matter how resilient it is. I'm wondering if these trees are going to be things like coastal cypress, which we see that UCSB is working on replanting coastal cypress where they've previously had eucalyptus trees, or possibly, oaks that will possibly become a nuisance for the property owner. But we do have, all these California initiatives to restore oaks across our land. And these are two of the trees that I think are most prominent to the image of Isla Vista. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the top tree varietals that this program is looking at?
Well, we love oaks. We have a nursery that we work with the Cheadle Center for Biodiversity and Ecological Restoration. We planted about over 400 or 500 trees on the North Campus open space. That's where we do a lot of our work. And so we have a nursery where we grow oaks. Part of the problem with any tree in Isla Vista is the heavy clay soils. I planted some trees, for example, over by the Camino Corto open space about 10 years ago, and they're maybe 4 or 5 feet tall in some places where they really should be closer to 20 feet tall. It depends upon the location, and it depends upon the soil that exists in where we plant. So it's going to, we're flexible on this, and what I really need to do is to take a look at what exists where we're going to plant that tree and what would work best. It may be a native. It may be a tree that likes very drought tolerant conditions, such as a coast live oak. It may be something that is more water loving if it's in the middle of a lawn. And it depends upon whether or not they want immediate shade, such as a fast growing tree like an alder, or if they would like something slower growing, not necessarily native, but still appropriate, something like a ginkgo. It depends. We're not married to a particular species of tree. We want to put the right tree in the right place.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. Ken, I really appreciate the presentation. I'm glad that you're working on this. As long as this is something that our council is okay with us signing on to, I think it's a great idea. And I definitely see the benefit for Isla Vista residents having more greenery, shade structure in Isla Vista. And ultimately, this is a great part of our wider efforts to increase sustainability and make Isla Vista more resilient in the decades to come. So thanks for working on this. Really exciting.
It seemed like a good fit. So hopefully the people at the Alliance for Community Trees and Bank of America will appreciate that. One of the things that they require is a celebration where we would invite Bank of America officials and Alliance for Community Trees, Arbor Day Foundation people to come down to the community to celebrate. And so I proposed a time in October that would be like on a Saturday. If we get this grant, and it's, this is a competitive grant, this is not a given. If we get this grant, it would start in June, which is not our planting time. we normally plant in the October, November, and by that time, this program should be well underway because it ends December 1st. And if we're going to plant 140 trees, which is what our goal is on this, we would have to start in late August, which means that ground's going to be rock hard. And so we have to, and also most of the students who are involved in participating in this may not be around at that particular time. We hope to again, offer some stipends for members of the community to participate. But it's an aggressive program. It's all doable. And it's kind of exciting, I think.
Thank you. And then are there any other comments from directors before we move on to public comment? Director Deschler.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I did consult with William Ash, our attorney, and he indicated that since there's no financial relationship with UCSB, that there's no conflict. So thank you. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Good. Yeah, we're not asking for any money. This is the nice thing about this grant. The way we're handling it, we don't have any employees. All the work that we do is related to a grant. So we have to contract it, in the way of offering a stipend. So we have a lot more flexibility, and I believe, than the community services district would, or the university.
All right, are there any public comments for this item? Yes, Mark.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I have a few comments and a few questions. So I think some of my first comments are that I heard discussion mentioned earlier about fruit-bearing trees, and I guess I'd love to not completely close off that potential conversation. I think there are some fruit-bearing trees that do work well in Isla Vista, specifically loquats. And I think there's a variety of trees that, if you look at the ethnoanthropologist, Professor Jeff Hawley, him and Ivy Ethnobotany have been planting and have been cataloging throughout UCSB's campus specifically, but also Isla Vista, as well as I think citrus trees, which I think are fairly resilient and are in the definitely the more heavily watered side of the spectrum. But I'm also not an arborist, so Ken might disagree with that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, yeah, I'd love to see if trees could be prioritized in areas that I would call shade barren. In a lot of urban environments, there's just not a lot of shade for people. You see this a lot in areas like South Central LA compared to other parts of LA, that there's just these massive heat sinks because there's just not enough shade for people. And there's parts of Isla Vista that definitely applies to. The other thing I wanted, these are kind of some of my questions, which is that it's a lot easier to not have a tree than to have a tree. And I'm wondering how is it just going to work with the people who, I guess the financial stakeholders of the property, because I've heard that a lot of local governments don't even like to get into, and I know this is not a local government, so I'm talking about the private part here, but a lot of local governments don't like getting involved with trees because there's the whole liability and upkeep of trees. And I'm curious just how that's going to work, or what the sell is to a property owner that may not want to plant a tree per se, or can be concerned about all the additional, I don't know, baggage may be too strong of a word, but yeah. And then oh yeah, please, Ken, I'll let you. Yeah.
Oh, you got a lot there. Well, the first part of the program would be an outreach program during June and July, and that would be to talk to people, and we're going to be talking to not only property owners, homeowners, but also to a lot of rental agents and rental agent managers. And we've got to convince them that the types of trees that we're proposing are going to be within their maintenance capability. So we may have to modify that which we're trying to do, but we're also trying to increase the amount of canopy. So planting a tree such as a loquat, which is really nice, it's a fruit tree, but it's a tiny tree in relationship to the types of trees. You know, we are being measured in terms of this grant by a program called iTree, which measures the amount of environmental benefit as you get from a tree. And the bigger the tree, the bigger the environmental benefit, and the bigger the potential environmental benefit of this tree as it grows over time. Well, you know, some of the smaller fruit trees may be appropriate, but that would be the exception, I would think, rather than the rule. We're trying to plant the biggest tree possible, but we're also trying to work with the property owner to come up with something that they like and that they will agree to. You know, we don't have the authority to say, hey, you got to take this type of tree versus another one. And also, we want it to be there in, you know, 40, 50 years. So it's got to be a tree that they can live with. Let's see, what else, other aspects were, well, you know, we're open to, again, to fruit trees, but it's tough to do this. We just did a project up at Fairview Gardens, planted a bunch of fruit trees up at Fairview Gardens a number of years ago, and they went through some changes and they stopped watering their trees. And we had to go back and, you know, help them put in an irrigation system to help to keep those trees alive there. So it really requires a lot of ongoing effort for fruit trees. Is there another? I'm sorry, I didn't answer all your questions.
No, that's all right. I think I had mostly just had comments. If it's all right, I have just a few more.
Heat islands.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're also asked as part of this grant is to deal with social inequities and racial inequities. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to provide a priority for minority applicants. And if, you know, so some of the things that we would like to do, we may not be able to do if it's a, you know, if a minority applicant versus a heat island situation. I think we're all looking at heat islands in Isla Vista, no matter where we plant.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken. If it's all right with the chair, I just have a few more. Thank you. The other things I wanted to mention are thinking about trees that may be meaningful to the Chumash community might be a good thought, specifically in this area. Thinking about trees that may be able to, although not the purpose of this grant, but also might buttress the cliffside, you know, over time and over many years might be a wonderful thought. Like, I know my favorite native tree is the California sycamore, and I you know, I don't know how well it does on this level of the coastal environment, but it would be lovely to see more of them. And then the last thing, and you mentioned this a little bit, Ken, I guess this is my last question directly as a public comment, is a long time ago I read Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard, and I think she said that there's not technically a definition for a tree. And I'm wondering, I don't know if that's true or just a piece of literary fiction, but B, the main point I want to know is, obviously the prioritization of large trees is important, but what is the whole scale of anywhere from kind of shrub to tree that this would be applicable to?
Technical definition of a tree is a woody structure 15 feet or more in height. We're trying to plant a large tree so we can get a lot of environmental benefit, so that it also can be measured by nationally recognized programs such as iTree. So that's what we're going to be trying to work with. And the Chumash revere the coast live oak as a native tree. And so, you know, if we could plant coast live oaks everywhere, I'd be happy.
That's all the comment I have. Thanks so much, Ken. This sounds cool.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any other public comments for this item? I see that Ash commented in the chat. Thank you, Mark. I'm at work, can't easily comment, but ditto to everything he said. And then if there aren't any other comments from directors as well. Yes, Director Geis.
Hey, Ken, good to see you
Hey,
again.
Bob. Good to see you.
Hey, so in this whole tree planting program, is the community plans that affect Isla Vista, which I think is the Goleta Community Plan and the Coastal Commission Plan, does it affect trees? I mean, do the community development plans start to get into trees? Because it seems like the trees affect the lighting affects the sidewalks affect where the trees can go. The streets, obviously, you don't want to, some places we have trees in the middle of the freeway, but so you're wondering how does your program fit into those community development ideas?
Well, I guess the master plan from 2007 for Isla Vista that the county did was, I guess, still the master plan that is currently in effect, unless it's been updated in some place before then, I don't know. But most of that addressed environmental impacts of things that were already there and environmental habitats that were already in place, and how you have to mitigate if you're going to remove something that is environmentally sensitive, or if you're, for example, going to remove an oak tree. But it doesn't talk too much about adding on. And in most cases, the planting of trees either on streets or on private property is not generally viewed by the county as having environmentally significant habitat. It is habitat, it is environmentally significant, but it's not necessarily recognized by the county as part of a program that we have to do anything about. We don't have to. The only thing that we have to do if we plant on public property is that we have to get the public property owners permission in the form of a permit from if we plant in the public right-of-way, we'd have to get a permit from Public Works Department. If we planted on the community service, the Recreation and Park District land, we'd have to get a permit from them. But if we're going on private property, that's pretty open.
So how does it work? Let's say you were planting a tree and there are utility lines overhead, or you're planting a tree and there are gas lines underground, or you're planting a tree and there are, the water lines and the sewer lines that, trees love sewer lines. I mean, how does that all fit together?
Well, there's a number you call before you dig, and they come out and look at where you're planting. If it's on private property, you'd have to take a look at the plans for that particular property. If you're planting in public areas, the utility companies offer a service where they'll come out and designate where all of their utility lines are, and you just make sure you don't plant that's conflicting with any of those. And the county has particularly in public rights of way, the County Public Works Department has a set of standards where they identify where you can and cannot plant.
So in generally in putting in a grant like this, do we avoid the public right of way because it's more onerous to put in a tree in the public right of way or near the public right of way? And do we more gravitate to the private sector?
Well, no, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, this particular grant allows us to plant in private areas, which is very unusual for a grant. Normally, you are required to plant in public areas because grantees want to see public benefit. This particular grant is more interested in, it's a community resilience grant. So it is oriented towards the people and not necessarily the public places. Although we can plant in public areas, we just didn't have the opportunity to do a significant amount of planning in the preparation for this grant because of a very short lead time. Doesn't mean we can't go back to Public Works and say, hey, you know, I see this area along Embarcadero where there's some potential places where we could plant some trees. Could we get a permit to plant in this area? And would try to establish that kind of dialogue. This would happen during this, you know, during June and July when we have an outreach program where we're going to be going out and looking for sites and hopefully getting all this wrapped up by the end of August so that we can start planting.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion relating to submitting a letter of support for the resiliency grant.
I move to authorize staff to submit a letter of support for a tree planting community resiliency grant.
There's a motion to authorize staff to submit a letter of support for a tree planting community resilience grant. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Kirsten.
Seconded by Director Deschler. We'll move to vote.
Muted. Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Deschler,
Yes.
Director Geis,
Yes.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
and Director Flaherty.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for joining, Ken. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your support. Again, this is a competitive grant. It's not a given that we're going to get it, but if we don't get it, we'd still like to work with the Community Services District to develop some type of program like this in Isla Vista. So thank you again. I will, I guess, Jonathan, you'll be getting back in touch with me about the letter.
Yeah,
And
we'll work on the letter this week and get it in.
we need to get that in soon, like tomorrow.
ASAP, don't worry.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to reports. Reports from members of the board. Are there any? Doesn't look like it. Oh, yes, Director Bertrand.
Thank you. I'll just mention that Catherine, Marcos, and I met with the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District Board at their board meeting to present on the Nightlife Project, and it went really well. Additionally, since our last meeting, a Daily Nexus article came out on it, and we've received a number of messages from different community stakeholders since then. So it's exciting. Presentation went well, and we're looking forward to scheduling the community meeting for later this month. Thank you.
Can you make sure to repeat that report at the next actually regular meeting?
Of course.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the board who have a report? Not, we'll move on to standing and ad hoc committees. I don't believe there are any reports. Moving on to district council. There's
No report at this time.
And then general manager.
Yeah, no report.
All right, so I would like to remind everyone that the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will take place on March 9th, 2021 at 6 p.m. virtually on Zoom. Thank you everyone for joining this meeting. And I'll entertain a motion for adjournment if there isn't anything else.
I move to adjourn.
There's a motion for adjournment. Is there a second? Seconded by Director Deschler. Or I'm used to Senate, how we do it in Senate. So I'm used to repeating the motion.
I'm anxious to go.
All right. I don't think we need to do the roll call for adjourn vote. I don't think anyone's voting now. So,
Yes.
Aye.
great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So this meeting is adjourned at 6:25. Thank you everyone for joining. Good to
Bye.
see you all.